Welcome. Hello, I'm Kristan Kershaw, one of your hosts for today, joined by Suzanne Kullberg. And today we have a special guest, Chenae Carey, is joining us to discuss a really interesting topic for those who are in business in particular, but I'm pretty sure that there's going to be big takeaways for anyone really who, is a human being that lives on the planet. It's all about staying in your own lane and learning and a variety of other things. Anyway, without me bumbling through it, I'm going to hand over to Chenae, who will introduce herself and give a bit of background on what we're going to talk about today.
Hello, over at team and listeners. Hi. As Kristan said, my name is Chenae. My job in the world that I have kind of self-proclaimed is to help people, business owners especially, and anyone who identifies as a woman to, as Kristan said, stay in their own lane. So I do intuitive business mentoring and coaching. And so my work kind of bridges the gap between intuitive sciences, so not just woo for the sake of woo because someone told you, and I put my my Bachelor of Business and marketing hat on and do a bit of strategy stuff as well. So I kind of weave the two together. And what I find that a lot of my work encompasses is bringing people back from bright shiny objects. Like, stick to your thing. What is your one thing? And when you nail that and you do that well, success is, I guess, almost inevitable. But what sabotages most people, and this is what I spend a lot of my time working on with my clients, is not chasing the next bright shiny object or pursuing the next person who seems to have the solution to your troubles. And I wrote a book on it, so I've got lots to say on the subject. So shall we dive in?
Certainly. So Chenae, if we were to sum that up, what are you over?
Yeah, great question, Suze. I am over people having rapid success and then professing to know how to teach that to the masses in a cookie cutter, this is exactly how you do it, follow these steps and you're guaranteed results kind of approach. I'm over that shit because it's doesn't kind of, I don't know, like, take into account different things. And we were talking about this just before we hit record. Like, it doesn't take into account someone's relationship status, whether someone has children or not. I know you two do and I don't. So when I am talking to clients who are in a similar boat to me versus you, it's very different strategies. Time is a very, very precious resource. And if you've got kids, it's even more so. And so, there's things like neurodiversity and there's learning difficulties and all sorts of things that this kind of package it up, I should say, sort of, here's the solution, this is what I did, you can do it too, just follow these steps. It doesn't work for people because there's no nuance to it. It's just, here's something that worked for me once, and as you can tell, I'm clearly over it. Here's something that worked for me once, and now I'm going to sell it to the world, and there's no consistency behind it. There's often no strategy behind it. So there's like one offer here. Now you've opened a can of worms, Suze. And then there's this offer over here. And then there's, I can do this thing over here. But none of them connect. None of them take anyone through a journey. And there's no experience that actually considers the client. It's all about the person going, I've got this idea and this inspiration landed. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. So that's what I'm over.
I love it. And I'm curious, we didn't talk about this before we hit record, but I'd love for both of your input into it. Why do you think people do that? Like, it's like, I've done it once and now I'm going to proclaim my flagpole in the sand. This is my land and I'm going to, preach to the masses. Like, why does it become a thing?
Kristan, do you want to go first? I have a lot to say, but
I think there's a big part of it is an insecurity of people going, well, here's something that I have done well and I succeeded in. And yeah, look, it's something that I can offer to the world. And that's not to say that they don't have great things to offer to the world, but I think it's often they're insecure in a lot of other areas. So it's almost grandstanding themselves to go, see, and they're trying to prove to themselves, if not anybody else, that they're actually worthy, that they can actually succeed. Maybe they've got a history of people telling them that you couldn't possibly achieve that or whatever. And so it's trying to puff out their chest. And again, it's not necessarily self-confidence. It often, I think, is the reverse of that. It's that they're lacking self-confidence. And so they try and grow it. Those watching video are seeing me doing lots of hand gestures. It's just trying to make themselves feel like they've done something well and see, I can do it. And they're partly telling themselves at the back of their mind, see, I can do it again. It wasn't just a fluke. But they may be good at that thing, whatever it was that led them to success, but that doesn't mean they can teach. That doesn't mean that they can, that again, it's going to fit into anyone else's scenario. It worked with their age, stage, time in business, a bit of luck and, you know, the universe pointing them in the right direction at the right time. But that doesn't mean that everybody else's universes and versions they're in are going to line up at the same time. Anyway, I could continue forever. There are many people in my experience in business who I could apply this to, and they stumble into it and they often have amazing skills in one area, but to then just say, here, everybody, you can do this, it's easy. And they've got a natural innate thing that they don't communicate that well either.
Yeah.
What about you, Chenae?
I think it's a combination of boredom, discipline, and an unregulated industry. Like for me, it's like a trifecta. So there's a sense of boredom that I see because the entrepreneurial kind of mindset is one that is creative, right? There is always an idea. We're never short of ideas. That's never an entrepreneur's problem ever. And so because we get bored with, you know, staying in our own lanes or picking one thing and selling that over and over and over again, the number of times I have said, and this is ironic, on repeat that it's our job to stay on repeat is like, yeah, I'm not bored of it though, because it's my job to keep saying it. And every time I say that, someone else gets the message. But that sense of boredom to jump to the next thing instead of having the discipline to pick one thing, get known for that one thing. And there's a quote in my book that's like, be known for one thing and then you can do anything. But a lot of people are too bored by sticking to the one thing is boring. And I get that, because that creative sense in whatever way that shows up for us is always like tapping on our shoulder and saying, hey, you could do this, or hey, you can do that. And I think because of all of those things and the fact that, you know, coaching and all of those sorts of areas that this often shows up in is an unregulated industry, people just think just because they have had that success that, as Kristan said, they can then teach it. But that doesn't, those two things aren't necessarily you get this and therefore you get that. Like
2 + 2 = 5.
Exactly. So I think, you know, if you're ever looking for someone and they're sharing their success and their results, do your research and find out when that success started, how long have they been going at it, what kind of longevity have they got? Because if you're going to work with a coach or a mentor or someone to kind of guide and scaffold you, pick someone who's got some skin in the game, because they are not going to then teach you bright, shiny object strategies that they have implemented themselves. There's a quality there that I think a lot of us are, instead of like that bright, shiny object, seeking that, you know, that adrenaline hit, that yes, that gratification. If we're seeking that, we'll go for those bright, shiny objects. But I don't think that's where the success is. And it's boring, but consistency is what pays off.
What was the third one? So there was the boredom.
So boredom, discipline, and an unregulated industry.
Discipline.
The discipline is, the discipline.
Sitting with the urge to deviate. And I think that's for so many entrepreneurs. So I have a client at the moment who's just starting her business and sitting with the urge to deviate, the discipline to do the actions that we've already described. And in this last week, and I know you listen to my podcast, shout out, you know who you are, I love you. This is just a perfect example. A very well-known author has now created a How to Become an Author series. Perfect example of what you're talking about. And it looks fabulous. The sales page is pretty, it's bright, it's shiny, it's very well done. All her #1 bestsellers are there, plus a blank, your name here, your bestseller. And I'm like, I'm not saying don't do this program. You totally could. However, are you being sold the legitimate day-to-day thing it's going to take to write, market, and sell this book? Or are you being sold this person? Because this person has an audience. They have a Hay House deal. They have all these things that, you know, as you said, you don't have at this stage. And it's not to say don't do it, but sometimes we buy this bright, shiny thing thinking I'm going to become a bestseller and my book's going to make me all this money. And it's like, and also what access do you have to this person? When you dive deep, as you said, Chenae, do your research. You get a bunch of pre-recorded videos. I'm not knocking those either. but are you the kind of person who has the discipline to set aside the time and sit down and watch those videos and work your way through them? And then once you have, who have you got to ask? When you work with a one-to-one coach or you work with somebody that you can come to and go, okay, what do I do now? Is there any of that on this course? And then we found there was some like Zoom sessions. So it's like, if 10,000 people have bought this course, what's the chance of your actual question even making it to the thing? So looking at behind the scenes of what looks bright and shiny, because you buy it thinking, well, I'm going to be a bestseller and I'm going to have all this passive income, what do you call it, royalties from my book. And it's like, well, actually, what does it take? And also I said to her too, in my experience, I'd be interested to know yours, Chenae, the writing of the book is such a small thing. The big thing is the marketing and selling it and getting it out there. And are you willing to do any of those things? And if you're not, then maybe a book isn't the strategy for your business.
And I wrote a book is not a good enough reason for someone to buy your damn book. Like, people don't, like, there are people that everybody would have in their circles and whatever that will just buy the book because they love the person, right?
Brene Brown, don't care what it is, I'll just buy her book.
Yeah. And then there's my mother-in-law, for example, absolutely wanted a copy of my book. And I'm like, you're not going to get anything out of it. It's literally called, Is Your Business a Prison? And she doesn't have a business, but she just wants a copy of it. So there's always going to be people, but that a marketing strategy does not make. Like, just because you wrote a book does not guarantee that it's going to actually sell. So yes, I wholeheartedly agree, Suze.
And just to jump in there, just because you don't have a book doesn't mean you can't be successful and that you can't do really well. Like, sometimes and I know we're picking a book here, but it could apply to many other bright, shiny objects, which you think that you need in order to achieve your business goals, your whatever else.
Yeah.
You may not need that whatsoever. I, out of the 3, don't have a book that I've written.
Yet. One's coming.
Well, yeah, truth be told, there's been some pushes in actually the last week where I'm like, okay, nudges, I'll just start getting the ideas out and that will turn into something later. And it's been brewing for a number of years, but I'm not ready to do it yet. It's not my time either. But that's the thing, right? Consistency in doing what I'm doing. I want to come from a point of view of when I'm ready and when I've got all of the experience that feels right for that time to do it. But I'm still successful in what I'm doing. I still feel that I'm a pretty strong authority in what I do in both of my businesses that I support. And I don't have a book and I don't have many of the shiny objects. I haven't gone through and done many things that may have been sold to me that I must do in order to be successful. So, like, consistently turning up is what I've done. I didn't mention this before for the audience, but Chenae and I have worked together for 5.5 years now, ish, give or take.
Maybe even more, something like that. Long time.
Yeah, late 2017, we began working together. Chenae started to help me with some marketing for an in-person event that we were doing for something that had been predominantly online before that stage. And it was a whole new, literally creating something from nothing at that stage. And we've not had times where we haven't been working together since. But Chenae's consistent approach to things has meant that it's helped me to get consistent along with other coaches. It's not just Chenae, although I'm pretty comfortable to say that a good majority of my success has been supported massively by Chenae. But that consistently turning up is what's got me to where I'm at. It's that, have I gone and looked at other things? Yes, but it's built on what I was already doing. And I'm still known in my industry for the consultations I do and the training that I do. And I've been consistently doing those for quite a period of time. So,
and I think that's the thing underlying all of our messages is consistency, because you can't get traction if you're changing around all the time. And part of Chenae's, one of her 3 things was boredom. We change. If you're bored, like, your business is not where you get entertained. It's your job. Go find entertainment in other areas, because every person that you go to who's selling something is going to tell you it's their thing, and they're not bad or nefarious or whatever. It's just that a website person's going to tell you need a website. A Facebook ads person's going to tell you need Facebook ads. A person who's a book coach is going to tell you need a book, and so on and so forth. A BNI rep's going to tell you need in-person networking. All of the strategies work if you work them. If you buy them and then jump around or overload yourself with so many things that you can't do any of them very well, then none of them work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning for transparency's sake that if my business hinged on my book's success, I would be working a day job. 100%.
Same.
And I think this is I didn't plan on talking about books, but I think it's important since it's come up, because if I add up the amount of put all of the time and hours aside from the actual writing and my own editing, if I add up the cost of my editor, because don't even get me started on books that don't have a decent editing process, even if it's just self-editing, that's a whole thing, but quality, right? So if I add up the editing process, the layout of the book, the whole thing, the investment, and then what, in terms of what I get revenue wise from book sales, we're not moving mountains, people. And I think that that's really important to have that discussion, and that a book will not make or break a business. And please don't ever put any expectations on a book for that, because if you've listened to or read Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Eat, Pray, Love, she talks about not putting pressure on your creative projects to be the thing that puts the roof over the head, like you said a moment ago, Suze. Don't have that expectation that your business is your entertainment, and also that the book is going to be the breadwinning aspect of a business, So, and that's a very humbling book. Anyone who's aspiring to write a book, I think Big Magic is definitely a good reality check from Liz Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, if you're not familiar with the name. If that's not a good reality check, I don't know what is.
And I think that's so true. We often put too much pressure on something to produce from the get-go. And that's the other thing, looking at the overnight successes, winding back to what we were talking about at the beginning.
Yeah.
How much capital do they have to put into it at the beginning, and how much backing do they have? Do they have a partner's income, or do they have, they've put up a big nest egg, so they have that runway to breathe and not put pressure on it? Whereas if you see a lot of people quit their day job very fast, and for some people that's fabulous, and for some people that's the worst thing possible, because they eat through their reserve. And then, and nobody wants to buy life coaching from a person who hates their life. Just saying. So it's and as you said, no book will make or break your business, no podcast, no post, no blog. I think, the consistency of just continuing to show up and disregarding the response and the clicks and the likes and that kind of thing. Not saying don't look at your stats, but not putting pressure on this post is going to be the one. If you did that for every time you posted something, but we do that when we publish a book or when we start a podcast or something, we're this is going to be the thing. Chances are the thing is the culmination of everything, not one particular thing that you've done. Because then we try and replicate it, which is back to the thing that was, you're over it in the beginning, Chenae. You have this successful thing, and then you're okay, now I'm going to create an entire business around this. And then everyone's kind of trying to do what you did based on the steps. And it's 2 + 2 doesn't equal 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really firmly believe that if you're going to invest in somebody, make sure they've got some background, like the life coach that hates their life, the business coach that doesn't have a bloody successful business. And people aren't silly, but any kind of hype can get somebody over the line if they're, eager enough to emulate that success that they're seeing that's presented. But look through the highlights reel, right?
As I say, that's such a great point. People aren't silly, but I do a lot of my work, with archetypes, and I know that you do too, Chenae. The full archetype can be often very easily swayed by a pretty website and some well-lit photos and some testimonials that, if you dug beneath or asked some questions, if they're starting to get defensive or if they're starting to turn back, that should be the red flag. As opposed to, sometimes it's just digging a little, but not from you trying to bring them down, but I'm going to invest a significant portion of money here. I want to be sure that you've got me. Obviously you can't guarantee the results, and I'm the one who has to do the work and everything. But is there anything beyond this pretty sales page with some nice, well-lit photos.
Absolutely. And what I think of, like, when you said that, Suze, I thought back to my journey. And if someone had asked me that in the early days and qualified some things, I would have been like, taken aback and a little bit defensive in those early days. But what happens with maturity within a business is that if anyone sat in front of me and asked me a qualifying question right now, like, yes, it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but I will meet that question and I'll answer it, and I'll answer it with confidence. And that is something that people who have literally just had that, instantaneous success can't do. It's not authentic and it's not congruent. It's like, new success isn't grounded and isn't necessarily it might be embodied. I don't want to make a broad sweeping statement there, but there's a lack of time for it to ground in, for someone to then be able to sit there and be interviewed as a prospective coach or whatever, to then be able to respond to those questions. So, and I do the same when people approach me now asking if I will, contribute to something or I'll speak as part of something. I don't just say yes. And there was a time many years ago when I did, and I don't anymore. And I ask qualifying questions and I say, what's in it for me? What's in it for you? Where are we at? And I no longer just subscribe to something just for the, like, oh, this is fun. Someone wants to be my friend. Like, this is business. This is not, then that's what takes things, I think, from that kind of hobby mindset into a successful business that actually contributes to a household's, income. And that's something that I want for everybody, but it takes work, as you say.
Well, I love that. And the thing is, if someone's going to be like, I'm not saying you have to be comfortable if somebody asks you a question, but like if people, especially if people come to work with me one-on-one, I want them to ask questions.
Yeah.
It's a big amount of money.
Yeah.
Whatever income stage they're at, and not just money, time and energy. If we're spending 6 months together, I want to make sure that we can both be upfront and say the thing, as opposed to like, well, I'll just buy this and then it's like, no. And if you're uncomfortable, like I remember the very, very, very first coach I worked with, had I asked some qualifying questions, it would have been a totally different experience, because she said on her marketing that she'd worked with Jay Abraham, so quite a big marketing person in the industry. I later found out she'd read his book. And I'm like, we're very different definition. To me, if like I've worked with means I've actually like been in container with, not like I've read their book or listened to their podcast. So sometimes it's like, and even like, so for because we came up with our books, when my book is self-published through Ingram Sparks, so it goes through different agencies. Amazon is one of the ones they sell it on. One of my clients sent me a message. She's like, oh my God, they only have 3 copies left. So I ordered all 3 because I know I'd love to give it to people, which I thought was so sweet. And I'm like, honey, it's print on demand. Like I can't control how they do that. Like I'm not Amazon or I'm not the third party. Yep. But like for me, I can't stand false urgency. So I would never say this many places if it isn't. But we fall prey, our full archetype's like, oh, I don't want to miss out. So we jump in and we don't pause down to go, well, if they did sell out, like they could print more. It's a book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Kristan, you and I have had many a conversation over the years about honest conversations, and we've both grown from them. And it's a really important aspect that I think gets kind of just pushed to the side, and we kind of just all play, happy families.
Totally. And the thing is that the way that you improve in business, and again, I know not everyone here who may be listening, although maybe by now people have gone, glazed over business talk, I'm not in business. But the self-development, right? If we're trying to achieve something in our life, you can learn, okay, that interaction with that coach, Suze, I won't make that mistake again. I'll ask other questions next time. I'll qualify that further. Hey, the next time someone emails me, calls me and says, hey, would you like to come and talk at this event? Instead of going, wow, someone wants me at their event, I might go, tell me more about the event. What do you expect of me beyond that? What do you expect for the time and whatever? Because it starts to, like, I regularly talk at a local midwife clinic and I love it. I do it it's about a 45-minute talk, and I love it because it gives me the opportunity to talk to mums who are either just have had their baby or are about to have their baby, and it gives them some simple things to understand, because the midwife clinic as a whole supports what I do generally within. They don't roll out the RCP necessarily, but they focus on food first and not synthetics and low intervention, all this kind of stuff. So it's very in alignment. But if I was to go and talk at some other clinic or whatever where they still were dishing out other things that are incongruent, I wouldn't do that now, because it would irritate me and would just, the incongruency would not be right. So I love to talk to people and spread the word about what I do, but I'm much more selective, and I just don't have the time or capacity to do what I once did. But it's a transition over time of learning from, and you know what, by consistently turning up and going, this is my work, you'll have these little experiences, and that's what grows your experience to then be able to evolve that, to do things like, you know, I'm doing one-to-one as my main work with clients personally. I do my other work with the RCP, but there's a membership that I'm working on behind the scenes. But that comes from the years of working one-to-one, to be able to see what that's going to be like and for it to be evolving. Was I ready to do it a couple of years ago when I gave a bit of a test run a try? It in itself, it was a single container. It was only designed to be a short course, but it didn't feel right at the time. And so we paused it, and that's not continued in general. But now the membership, the way it's evolved, it's a different beast, but it's very much consistent with the message of what I've been doing for 6 years.
I love how you've both touched on evolution, as in we can try something and it hasn't worked in the way that we anticipated. We can, and a lot of us do, make it mean something about there's something fundamentally wrong with me and I'm not supposed to do this, park the idea and ride off into the sunset. Or, as you both have said, we can be like, okay, well, next time somebody says, hey, do you want to speak on my platform? Can I ask some questions, or let's have a discussion about this? What is expected on me afterward? Like you said with the midwife thing, Kristan, or with the interview, Chenae, what am I, because I've had it before, people ask me to do something, yeah, sure, and then later have been like, you've got to send 3 standalone emails to your list and you've got to do this. I'm like, I have my own podcast, which I don't send standalone emails to my list about. I'm not sending 3 about your thing, and this should have been discussed on the front end. So it's a learning for both. Or is it going to be marketed in a way that isn't congruent with your values? Like, there was something once I was going to speak out and it was being marketed in a way that wasn't aligned for me. And I was like, actually, this is a no from me. So I changed my mind. I said I was a yes and was a now a no. But, you know, what is expected from both parties, and is it something that aligns with you, so that it's going to be of greatest benefit to both? Because sometimes by you saying no, you know, I'm all about boundaries, it allows someone who's a better fit to say yes, and that is a win-win. So when we say no to someone, we're not necessarily letting them down. We're actually letting it both of ourselves off the hook, and then they can go and find somebody who it is enriching to.
Yeah. And you've both used the words alignment and congruent, and I think those 2 things are really important. And if we were to look at alignment and congruence through the lens of like making decisions, but then also trusting yourself. And Kristan and I talk about this a lot, but if you are tempted by something because it's a novel idea and it's promising to solve all of your problems, I've got something on my lip, I'll get that, there we go, versus there's an innate knowing within me that this is what I need to do, and you trust that, you are going to make far more sound like the decision that you've just described, Suze, like, oh, I've hit something, this is not in alignment with me, my yes has changed into a no. Like, your decisions aren't forever. None of our decisions have to be forever. We can change, and we are totally entitled to. But how often do we make decisions because there's that scarcity mindset, or there's that fear of missing out, or whatever, yet what's really right for us, regardless of the price is never the reason why someone will actually buy something or won't buy something. It may seem that way, but if that's the case, then money mindset is the answer. Like, I can totally go off on a tangent, I won't, about my money mindset journey though, but it's never about
episode
the money.
2. Yeah, money mindset with Chenae. Let's do it.
So yeah, I think that and we've talked a little bit about like our intuition and whatnot, how it's not a special gift. You've all got it. We've all got it. It's not a special gift. It's innate, but most of us don't trust that. And I think that if we use that in choosing people to work with, we'd be far better off, and there'd be far fewer stories of, I bought this from this person and it was a flop, or I spent this many thousand with that person and I didn't get anything out of it. There'd be fewer of those stories, but we don't trust ourselves enough, just generally speaking, to make decisions that are good, sound decisions for us.
And I think on that point, for anyone who's had that experience, I spent this many thousand with a person, I didn't get anything out of it, really mind that for the lesson, because you might not have got what you hoped, but you did get something. And maybe the thing is, I ask more questions, or the thing is, I find out more about what's expected on the other side, because sometimes you get into something and you don't read the fine print, or you don't have that conversation, and they're like, oh, so I needed to make 100 calls, or I need to do this. Like, I didn't meet the requirements for the thing, but I didn't know what the requirements were. And there is about, transparency and ethical marketing, and Kristan, I've done an episode on that. But it's kind of like, if it looks too good to be true, chances are it is. So slowing that down rather than giving into, it could be the peer pressure, especially if you're on a sales call for some of these people. And like, if you sign up now, I'm going to do this and do this. And it's like, no. Yeah. If there's urgency there, they're not confident in their product.
No. And I always insist that anyone who comes and does I interview, I don't call them sales calls or discovery calls, and everyone uses different terms, but I interview my potential clients, and it's not a me interviewing them because I think I've got any kind of authority or betterness. It's us interviewing each other. Like, I'll ask you questions, you ask me questions, but I never insist that anyone makes a decision on the call. Please go and sleep on this if you need to talk it through with anybody, whether that's significant others for the financial investment or otherwise. Like, have that conversation and come back to me and let me know if you've got any questions as well. Like, and that, I think, again, is an abundance mindset thing, but also like, I'm genuinely interested in you making a really well-rounded decision, and I'm not going to force you to do that on the spot, because that is going to increase the likelihood of you regretting it. And I don't want anybody who buys from me to have any kind of buyer's remorse. That sucks. But as a result of all of that, 90-something% of my interviews convert, because it's a well-established system and it really works, and people can trust that I'm going to be consistent. And I ask really robust questions when they come into it. So, back to that theme of questions, and what do you ask before you commit to, and what can you answer as well if you're, in the coach's seat. I think that would bring a lot more quality to our industries. Let's just put it that way.
I love the decision, interview, because it's like, is this a fit? It goes both ways. It's not a sales call. Like, if people come to discuss with me, I'm like, my sales page, you already would have read that. We're having this discussion about, like, what questions do you have, or and they're totally common to have questions outside of the ones that are there. But let's have a discussion going deeper, not like, I'm going to sell this to you.
Yeah, because if your process is working anyway, when they're there, they're almost over the line. And I think that's a really big distinction that, for my personal journey, I recognize. I remember talking to a really dear friend of mine who, she was an inspiration in my earlier years for my business. I'm like, how do you do this? And then she was saying the exact same words that just came out of my mouth, which was, when people get onto that call, it's already a yes. We just need to kind of have a quick chat, make sure that it's definitely the right decision. And then, like, it's already a yes. And I remember thinking back then that was like, that feels really far away. That's really scary. How is that possible? And that, in the growing and maturing of my business, has now become my normal, because I focus my energy and attention on that. Like, that's what I want. I want more of that. I didn't even know that was possible, but now I do. And I want that. And I've worked towards that over the years, and it's brilliant. I've created that with the consistency. So yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Kristan, what were you going to say? We kind of both overrode you.
Oh, that's all good. It's funny. A neighbor came to drop something off. I've got one of the dogs sitting booping my leg, and she's like, come on, give me attention. It's everyone all at once. Something I was going to say earlier, which is a bit different from the direction we were just headed, but I think is worth saying. So sometimes the silver bullet comes unexpectedly. And so where Chenae was headed right from the beginning on this, as far as, hey, I've done something successfully, so now here's how you can do it, package it up and with a little bow and say, look, just because I did it this way, it will work for you. In 2018, Chenae, you were helping me with my Facebook posts, and we had an overnight success, which was very overnight and very successful. In a Facebook post, a picture of your hand with some mysterious white powder in it, otherwise known as cream of tartar. Don't anyone get worried. It was a little hack that I'd been using for years before, and you're like, hey, let's turn this into a post. We totally could have just gone off and marketed that and gone, look how easy it was, but it's not, because it's not replicable. So have a look at, so just for anyone who's curious what on earth I'm talking about, if you put a pinch of cream of tartar under your tongue, when you've got a headache or you're feeling dizzy or generally kind of feeling a bit off, it can make a really big difference and give you some relief pretty quickly. And so it was just literally a simple tip like that went off. And when I say it went viral, it went from, my page had like 300 or 400 people, I think, following it at that point. Within 4 days, it was up in the thousands, and I ended up with 34,000 people following my page or liking the page within weeks. And the post was seen by, I think it was within 5 days, it had been seen by 1 million people, and it went up every 2 days to another million for a while. And it stopped recording it at about 13 million, if I remember correctly. And then the powers of Facebook fact checking ended up stomping it, and so it stopped at I don't know, I think the back end I managed to get it up somewhere like 20 million people. So a lot of people have seen that. And then there were rip-off people who copied my post and did it in the US, and also who went viral. But does that mean that I'm an authority on creating a viral post? Does that mean, and honestly, it was stressful. It was really, really stressful to deal with it. You saw me having to field, and I wasn't ready for that. And so you've got to be really careful that you think that you want something. Everyone's like, oh, I'd really like to get my name out there in my industry. I can tell you, getting a viral post on Facebook is not necessarily the best building of business, because the people that came to my business weren't qualified, like what you were just talking about. They weren't really aware of anything that I did. So all of a sudden it was, how do I get this information to them to start back at 0 point here versus coming in and going, well, I want to feel better yesterday, because they had thought that that was their silver bullet to get better from whatever was going on. And it's just not so.
I love that. That's a great point to end on. You know, when things go viral, is it bringing in people who are a fit? Or is it like, I had a post nowhere near as viral as yours, but, you know, as viral as mine's gone. When I first started making reels, I was all hung up about it. And I was like, well, nobody's going to watch this anyway. So, you know, I might as well just play. I had my book in it. Speaking of book, Chenae, it was backward because I was like, oh, well, it's fine. And I was speaking about taking my son to church, and they were saying how kids don't swear these days, like how my kids don't swear because kids swear so much these days and whatever. And then my son's like, oh, Mummy wrote a book. And they're like, what's it called? My book has a swear word in the title. So anyway, the reel got like 70,000, 80,000 views. All the comments in the thing were about the swearing in church and stuff. Nothing to do with what I do or best fit. And it was an entertaining post. So sometimes people are like, I've had this thing go viral. Like, yeah, that's great. So if you're teaching, then going to make that your strategy, I'm going to teach you how to go viral. What are you really wanting in your business, to go viral or to make money? Because one does not necessarily lead to the other.
Yeah, and
it's just like the book thing, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, Chenae, how can people find you? What have you got on offer currently? Take the stage.
Is my book backwards, Suze?
No, it's the right way around.
So I've mentioned it a few times, so I probably should show you what it looks like. This is me with my serious face on my book, because as you've probably noticed, I'm not here for the fluffy conversations. I'm here for what creates success. And so this book was written, it was born out of a program that I was doing that required a thesis style submission, and the book was born of that. So what I did is I wrote 6 anecdotal style prisons into a format that basically steps you through how to identify what's going on with some stories and I basically just done a big sweep of all of the clients I've served over the years and noticed that there's patterns and collected them into little, little anecdotal bits and pieces. And so Is Your Business a Prison is about entrepreneurial freedom, because we all have this idea of what we'd like to create when we start our business. And the bright, shiny objects is often one of the things that distracts us and takes us away from that goal or that vision. And so this book is full of practical things that you can do. So there's meditations and reflection prompts and journaling prompts, if that's your gig, and all sorts of bits and pieces. But there's a whole chapter on sticking to one thing, a whole chapter on it. And it's one of the prisons. So the prison, I called it All the Things. So if you resonate with that and you're like, oh, that's me, I've been trying to sell all the different things and I'd like to maybe do something differently, maybe grab a copy of that, because it will help. And it shares, part of the story is also my story in that chapter as well, where when I very first started my business, I had a website that had like all the things I could do, and they're still true, but I don't lead with all of those things because it was a hot mess and it was very overwhelming. So the best thing to do is to just search Is Your Business a Prison? It's a very unique title. It's a bit punchy. It's definitely not the most palatable title, but I'm not here for your comfort. I'm here for your evolution. So yeah, Is Your Business a Prison? Very interesting topic. I ummed and ahed about that topic, that title, for a very long time. And yeah, so socials, website, I can give you all those links and whatnot. So Facebook, Instagram are my two main platforms, and you'll find me on my website and on Insight Timer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Lots of
Kristan's got something to say. I can see it.
Oh, not too much. It's just more go do it, people. If you're in business and you want to get a different perspective on the choices that you make, Chenae's book is a nice little way to dig deeper in a different way from what you previously may have. And she's pretty awesome as a way to, if you want to work with someone one-to-one, or there's 1 to 2 packages where you can work yourself and someone else. Personally, I found that invaluable for myself, my business, and the other business that I work in. Chenae is there. But outside of that, Chenae's a pretty awesome human being. She's going to say it how it is. So if you like that in someone, or if you want someone to be accountable with you in that way, actually, who am I kidding? Both Suze and Chenae are really good at say it how it is. Let's get on with this. Thank you for your time, Chenae.
Honest people, don't you, Kristan? Yeah,
I do. There's a slight reflection on me too. There is no, I am who I am. I do what I do.
Yeah. Amazing.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us, Chenae. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please leave us a rating or a review. If reviews aren't your things, just give us 5 stars like an Uber for the cred. We would love that. Thank you. Until the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.